welcome to the Improv Summit. I'm Spencer, and that is Rick with me today. Rick, how's it going?
Going all right. It's a loaded question now in December of 2020. How's it going? But
Yeah,
considering that is when and where it is, it's going okay.
yeah, I would agree. I feel like it's going.
Yeah,
Something's happening.
yeah. We
It
are
is.
we are alive, and that is something to be grateful for.
That is. There's still a couple of days left of 2020 at the time of this recording, but for now,
Yeah,
I've made it to 2021. So
good for us.
good
Yeah,
for us. Anyways, let's dive into what we're here about. Let's talk about improv, shall we? Yeah, let's do it.
yeah.
So, speaking of how's it going, this has nothing to do at all. It's just more about a background question. Give me a little bit about your improv background. I mean, I know you have a lot of experience, so you don't necessarily need to do the whole, bio, but whatever you want to pick and choose from that.
Sure. I started doing improv with any kind of regularity when I was like a freshman in high school, which was in I'll just say the mid '90s. I'll just leave it there. Um, I don't know why I'm being coy, but I'm being coy. And did improv pretty much all the way through high school. Was in college. I was heavily involved with. I went to Gonzaga University, and I was part of the college improv group there. Uh, GU Theater Sports Guts, which is still going,
Hmm.
which is amazing. And actually, I'll mention the high school improv group that I started with friends my freshman year is also still going, which is crazy. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Let's see. 2000 late 2000 I started getting involved with this thing that I hadn't really heard of before called comedy sports, because a new one was going to be formed in Spokane, Washington, where I grew up and was going to college. And so I was one of the founding players for that company, which is not around anymore. Comedy Sports is, but Comedy Sports Spokane isn't. Um, and then in 2003, I moved to LA and got onto the main company, Comedy Sports LA. Then, and I've been with Comedy Sports in LA ever since. I'm currently the education director there. And what else? I did the school program at IO West, which no longer exists, which is
R.I.P.
yeah, really weird. RIP indeed. It's a good community. It's sad that that's gone. And I've performed and taught and studied all over LA and all over the country. I continue to study at Improv Theater. I continue to do shows there, comedy sports, and then occasionally just guesting with other groups and whatnot. Um, my kind of creative home base has remained comedy sports, but I also love long form at various places, and I'm always delighted when I get to go play at the Pack or
Mm-hmm.
wherever.
Great, I love that. I also went to IO West. That was the first improv school I ever went to. I first did musical improv before I did regular improv, uh, and that was exciting. And then I started doing improv online. I found them. Luckily, I've been able to get scholarships, which has been wonderful. And they're great with genre and narrative. I love it. I did Shakespeare. I did Jane Austen. So I've been challenging but fun. So I'm going to give
Brian
them a
Paul
little
wrote.
shout out.
Was
What'd
it
you
was
say?
it, who did you have for those classes?
For Jane Austen, it was Paul Rogan, and then for Shakespeare was Brian Lohman.
Yep. Um,
Both great. And they're
ama-
going to start a Jane Austen 2, which I'm hoping I can save up to take, or that the scholarship slots come back up, because I would love to keep taking all the levels of that. Same with Shakespeare, but Shakespeare was a little bit harder, I think, for me.
sure. Well, I think it's harder for anybody.
Yeah, that's true.
It's difficult. It's, several hundred years older than Jane Austen is.
The dialect is what's, I think, the biggest thing, because with Jane Austen, it's a lot of vernacular that we still use today versus a lot of Shakespeare, which is vernacular that for whatever reason has started to die down into the
Sure.
modern age.
Yeah, yeah. Not a lot of people saying, "Look up in the welkin." Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a word until you just said it.
it's an archaic word for sky.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
we actually did like a moon, like the moon and how it glows. We did a whole thing on that, and we had words like compliments and insults, and I was like, what can I use to
Yep.
say my little phrase here? Anyway, on that note, completely unrelated, I'm going to say that a lot. Let's talk about what drew you to improv. So that's my question: is what drew you to improv specifically? Like, I mean, a lot of people are actors and they need improv for their resume, but I guess I'll put these two together. What drew you to improv, and why did you continue doing improv?
Yeah, those are pretty different answers. So,
Sure.
I think I originally was drawn to it because I felt I was good at it. It was something that I felt like I was good at, and this was, um, high school. Uh, I'm pretty certain that I'm a better improviser now, but I'm just saying, like, I felt like there was some natural ability there, and it was nice to feel like I was good at something.
Mm,
Um, I did well in school, but I was never like great at sports, or I loved music, but I'm a very meh uh, saxophone player.
mm,
So having something that I felt like I was pretty good at right off the bat was great. And then there is this social aspect to improv that is just kind of hardwired into the art form, right?
mm,
It's
mhm,
it's so as a high school kid, it was a place where I was able to like build and maintain friendships, and some of those people I'm still in touch with.
mm,
Uh,
mhm,
but those are all kind of like high school reasons. I think I kept doing it uh, because it was exciting to me to realize and to continually realize how much I don't know. You know,
mhm.
like you get that moment where you're studying with somebody and it's like they crack your brain open and you're like, oh my god, and then like continuing to have that where people continue to crack my brain open, um, I think is a big part of it. I think uh, at some point improv became a form of therapy for me, uh,
Mm.
for which I almost want to apologize to all audiences I've ever had, but like whatever, it is what it is.
Yep.
Um, and at a certain point, I also became an improv teacher, which is something that I continue doing that for very different reasons than I continue doing improv itself.
Mm,
But like teaching, the experience of teaching and of being there for someone else's head cracking open, like watching someone kind of get something for the first time is really exciting, and having students, some students I've been teaching for years now, and like watching them continue to progress and grow, it's really exciting. It's yeah. uh, I get So one of the things that I teach is improvising Shakespeare, and I get so jazzed when I see somebody who was really scared. Because like you say, it's intimidating. It's
mhm.
it's it is almost like a foreign language, right?
But so much fun.
Yes. Once you get to that place of like, oh, this is a new playground, it's so much fun. Yeah. And watching someone get over their fear and get to the place where like they're kind of catching fire. It's just really exciting. So
Mm, I love
that was a
that.
long.
No, it's okay. I actually am gonna. This actually kind of leads into this because you were my teacher for one of the 401s that I house managed or took or whatever at Comedy
Yeah.
Sports, and I will never forget learning Lost in the Woods. And I will tell you, I love that game. It is probably my favorite Comedy Sports short form game I think I've ever played because my brain is so analytical that my brain's like, what are the words that fit in this idea? Let me just shout them all out. Let me start saying them all. Like once I figured out that the goal was to like actually get out
Right.
in the game, like
Right.
it's not like it's like me supporting my teammates by like, okay, you're let's figure this out, as opposed to me being like, I'm gonna keep doing the whole scene all by myself because I'm not gonna say the words. The whole goal is to say a word that's gonna either be the hallelujah word or a kill word.
Yeah.
And then I brought down to teaching it to kids, which
Yeah.
is so funny watching like 8 and 9 year olds play it because
Right.
I'm like, they're like, what? I'm like, no, you want to die. And they're like, what? And so then they just start like shouting words so they can
Yeah.
actually like die, and they all die within like a minute. But what I loved about that was it was like I said, it was a game that was so specific to my brain. And I
Sure.
think that that's why it was. I remember, I think it was our class show. I was like, let's play Lost in the Woods. That's the game I want to play. And we ended up playing it for a class show. And I don't know if you remember this. I remember this very vividly. It was my
Okay.
team that was playing. And the suggestion, I think, was beach or something. And I
Sure.
remember so hard that everyone was dropping like flies. And I was in the back and I was like, I don't know what else. I just kept saying words. And there were like hints of like I'm gonna put this lotion on. I'm gonna bask out here, and I was like sun tanning lotion, SPF, and and everyone was like, and I was like, I'm so close. I know I'm so close, and then it was like, I'm gonna take a shower, and I literally went sunbathing. It like clicked in my brain what the word was, and I heard die, and I was like, finally figured it out. But it finally clicked when I saw the shower and then knew all about all the tanning. I was like, tanning and shower. What is the
Right.
thing here?
Yeah.
And so it worked out really well in that moment where I was like, I'm gonna shout it to the rooftops. Like it was great. It was like one of those. I don't know if you remember that game at all, that level, but that I remember specifically because I was on stage by myself for like a minute and a half trying to
Yeah.
figure out this one word.
So I'm not sure if I told your class the story of my introduction to that game. Should we mention what the game is
Yeah,
for?
maybe. I was gonna say, was this the drawbridge one?
No, that is a story that I told you. I wasn't there
Yeah.
for that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so there's a couple of stories that go with this game.
Maybe we should. Yeah, we should explain what Lost in the Woods is.
The game Lost in the Woods is you send the team out of the theater that is going to be playing it, and you get a suggestion of an environment, typically kind of like a general environment, like yours was the beach. And then you get from the audience, you get a bunch of different suggestions. You winnow them down until you have as many words as there are players on the team, and then one special word, the hallelujah word. And the other words, the suggestions, so like sunbathing is one of them. Um, those are the die words. The players come back in, they begin performing a scene in that environment, and they're trying to guess the die words so that they will die. And once they say the word, the audience yells die. They have to justify a death within the scene really quickly. And the remaining players continue on until everybody is dead or someone stumbles on the hallelujah word, which is a super hard one that will immediately end the scene and bring any dead people back to life. So the two stories that I've got for that game, because that game it's a really fun game, and it's a fun game for the audience because they're constantly kind of egging on the players like, oh,
Mhm.
you're so close. But the one story is, of course, like Mark Molnitsky, who used to be with Comedy Sports. He's a DJ, radio DJ, but he his team went out. The suggestion was castle. The hallelujah word, the super hard word, is portcullis. And of course, the game takes a while to set up, right? Like you send the team out. The ref is spending quite a while getting all the suggestions together.
Mhm.
They get everything together. Uh, the whoever is refing might have been James. Players, are you ready? Yes. Tweet. They begin the game. Mark says, raise the portcullis. Tweet, and that's time. Game was like 5 seconds long after probably 5 minutes of setup.
There you go.
But my introduction to that game was my very first Comedy Sports LA match.
Mm.
Back in, it was October of 2003. It was a Halloween match. So it was Lost in the Woods made perfect sense for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never played the game, and it was not really clearly explained to me. And I had been playing, short form for long enough that I was like, most of the time, if you're an experienced short form improviser, you can just sort of listen to the explanation of the game and you're like, okay. And you can kind of jump in, right?
Mm-hmm.
That game's more complicated. So the game starts, we had the suggestion of beach, and within maybe a minute, my teammates were dead. And it was just me. And I was so lost. It was probably 30 seconds. It felt to me like days,
Mm-hmm.
where I was just on stage, wandering around, pointing at imaginary objects and saying words like just,
Uh-huh.
sandcastle, wave. I didn't know what to do. Finally, mercifully, like the game ended and I was put out of my misery, but I was already intimidated doing my first show with that company. And like, the people that I was playing with were, I grew up watching some of them on TV. I was super intimidated. And then I just, felt like I had the worst show ever. And I never did improv again.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
You have a terrible show that you always remember, and you
Yeah.
forget about all the good shows you have, because
Oh
that's what
yeah.
improv does
I
for you.
don't remember any of
But
those.
the reason why I said it was a good segue, because I actually remembered why, is the next question was, do you have any favorite improv games or any favorite warm-ups that you like to do, either as a performer, as a teacher with with your team or your students? I say team now. Yeah, team. Yeah. But any of those things, favorite games, favorite warm-ups, because one of my favorite games is Lost in the Woods.
Yeah, it's a great game. If like just games, I really love replay,
Hmm.
and there are probably 1,000 variations on that game.
Sure are.
You know, there's mega replay and super mega replay and replay pile up and like whatever.
Genre replay, naive replay, mega naive replay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so many versions. But I love that because among other things, I'm a big genre nerd. So getting to do a scene in a variety of different genres, I
Mm-hmm.
just I love doing that. And finding ways to fit the genre within the framework of the original scene. Yeah, I really love that. One of the warm ups that I love, I will frequently use this when I am like coaching a group for the first time. Um, it's a warm up called Lizard Brain Zip Zap Zop. Uh, and I don't remember if I ever had you guys do that in the 401 that you were in. But basically, the way that it works is, say that you've got a group of 10 players, and you want to get everybody kind of warming up. Um, I'll put together two different groups of three. So we've got a group of three over here and a group of three over here. Within those groups, I tell them to play Zip Zap Zop, but the goal is to play it too fast. The goal is to go too fast so that like it's your lizard brain and you're making mistakes all over the place. And every time you make a mistake, you throw yourself out into the on deck pool and someone else comes screaming in and starts a new Zip Zap Zop. Right, so it's
Yeah,
just
we definitely played this.
yeah,
Zip Zap Zop is the most stressful game for me because I'm super competitive, and so I don't like it because I'm
yeah.
already like like it's like with Thunderdome too, or Punderdome. But
The reason I love Lizard Brain Zip Zap Zop is the goal is to fail. The
Mm-hmm.
goal is to screw up. If you aren't screwing up, you're not going fast enough. You're trying to do it right.
Mm.
And as someone who is constantly falling into the trap of trying to do things right, I love this warm up because the goal is to screw up and to immediately and selflessly throw yourself out when you do. And and it's really easy as a teacher or a coach to see the people who aren't playing fast enough because they stay up too long.
Mm.
And I'll be like, Greg, I'm making Greg up, but like,
Yeah.
Greg, you've been up there for a while. You're not screwing up. You better screw up.
Mm.
Like I love that.
It's funny that you say that. And again, I'm just going to keep talking about aha moments for me when I took your class. And I don't know if you remember these, but I remember them very vividly. I
Okay.
remember we were playing, I think it was X word sentences. And it was like the other team just kept talking. They just kept talking. And I was on stage, like waiting to talk. And
Uh-huh.
then at one point, it was like, okay, you can't say the letter S or whatever. And I was like, okay, great, got it. And they're like, Spencer, you're up. And I'm like, great, got it. And I was like, so anyway, as I was saying, and I just started saying S's because the rest of my team hadn't gone in. And
Right.
it happened also. And so again, with the failure thing, like I knew I was going to fail in that moment. I was like, I'm going to fail because it's not about me, it's about the team.
Yeah.
And so one thing I also, it was like, again, like a number, it was like the like 3 words, or like you can only say 3 words, you can only say whatever. I don't remember the name of the game, but it's very similar to export sentences but with
Oh,
a
that is
number.
expert sentences.
Oh, it is X word. Then the other one is, oh, a world with no eyes. That's what it was. World with no eyes. And this is X word sentences.
Right.
But I remember it was like, you literally looked at me and you gave me like this big smile and you're like, 3 words. Are you ready? And I was like, yes, I understand what you're asking me to do. I got it. And it was
Yeah.
like, 3 words, ready? And I was like, Dad, I really want to go to the theme park. I just like kept talking and you were like, tweet. And I was like, yeah, okay. And then and not to toot my own horn, but like these are the moments that I love as an improviser when I finally figure out. I'm like, oh, oh, and like it's like in this case, failing is good because
Right.
I'm not going down. I'm lifting my team up. And I
Right.
remember there was one other time that it was we had just played Blind Line and there were still some strips on the ground and we were doing X word sentences and it was like it's 4 words and I was like, you know what, it's my turn, I'm just going to pick one of these up and see what happens. And it was
Right.
like, the cat is fine. And I was like, oh, that's actually 4 words, perfect. And then the other person, the other team said something and then I was like, you know, I'm gonna pick up the other one and see what happens. And that one was not the same, it was like 8 or 9 words, so I was like, that didn't work. But it was this big bold choice and I was
Yeah.
like, you know what, it worked the first time. The odds of it happening a second time is very low.
Right.
But what fun is that for an audience to see like those kind of choices, or to see something where it's like, you know what, I'm just going to pull it up and see what happens. Like I know it's not within the game structure, but
Right.
two, I can't control how many words are going to come out. And I've learned when I watch that game, I love it when, or those kind of games, I love it when people aren't like, anyway, so I think it's like when you're actually counting versus like, I have to say 12 words exactly. Let me see. Anyway, so I think, and it's like, I'm just saying words and it's like 9, 10, 11, 12. Like when you get to the point where you're like, I think I had enough words, but I'm not sure. It's more fun, I think, for
Right.
an audience to see people like struggle, but not like struggle. It's like a purposeful fail. It's a purposely failing. And I think that's so going back, the failure, I think is what the idea of failing. I think
Yeah.
when I learned as an improviser that it was okay to fail. The moment I failed, I was like, oh, that's it. Okay, no big deal. Like and I think like one thing was short form really taught me that over long form. I love them both, but I think short form really would have trained my brain better for long form had I done it first.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. Anyway, on that note,
I I think some of those specific like lessons you really it takes much longer to find those lessons doing long form. You get a lot of other things out of long form, but
absolutely.
to learn I think it's you learn doing things for the good of the show or for the good of the audience uh, really quickly in short form
Mm,
because you have that framework where you're getting really constant feedback. Some long form you almost want to disregard, the audience for chunks of it.
Mhm.
If that's in better service of a story, for instance. But with short form, you boy, if you aren't entertaining the audience with short form, you need to figure out what's missing, because
Mhm.
like short form is like it's the bubblegum pop of improv,
Mhm.
and I say that lovingly. It's the thing that pretty much everybody can go like, that's fun. I don't know that there's deep meaning to it, and then every once in a while there will be, but like
Mhm.
it's catchy and you can dance to it. You
Oh
know.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
have before I get into my question, because this is all relevant, I have one more story that I want to share, and it was actually the Jane Austen improv class I had at Improv. And I remember doing the scene, and it was like an introduction, man and woman and being introduced or whatever.
Sure.
And we were talking, doing the whole small talk, how's the weather kind of stuff.
Right.
And at one point, because I'm not great with like dates and time references. At one point, I just went, "Oh, I think you've hit the nail on the head. If that was invented during this time, I believe it was. But if it wasn't, that's okay too. But you get what I'm saying." And it was so funny because one, if I was right, then I like show that I'm like really smart with all my knowledge. But two, if I failed in that regard, it's also funny
Sure.
because I made a choice to just like say it, and like now that's, and like in this world that's what it is now at this point. And so it's funny because it was actually reciprocated by someone else saying a common phrase that was also very common, like around the same, I don't remember what the phrase was, but then we looked them up later and that was like from like 1530, so it's like we're good.
Yeah. I
1530
was
is
gonna
way
say,
before
it was like
1800s.
they had nails for a long, long time. So
Yeah. But I was like the nail on the head phrase, but I was like, at that point, I was like, I'm just going to go with it. And I was like, I'm sure that's a pretty old phrase at this point. But that leads me into my question that it took me a very long time to get to. But the point was, I talked about some of my favorite moments that I had these aha moments in class or things that I did in class. Do you have any particular moments that you really love, either performing or coaching or whatever it is, either from you or from a student or a teammate, that you're like, I loved it when this happened?
um yeah, well, yeah, I mean, there there
I
are a
mean,
lot.
just like I know there's a lot, but like if
Yeah.
you had like one or two that stick out to you.
uh I'll say this is the thing that I'm thinking of right now. I frequently I've been teaching a version of an improvising Shakespeare workshop since like 2005.
Mm-hmm.
No, earlier. Wow, a long time. I've been teaching a version of it for a long time, and I've changed it and expanded it and created like more workshops for it and whatever as I've gone on and learned more and come up with ideas and stuff. But one of the things that I had fairly early on was teaching people to get into a poetic mode of speaking by using extended metaphors. And because it's a pretty simple trick, but it's one that Shakespeare himself used a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it is really effective. Um, and so I'll give a student a prompt, like you know, the night is dark, and then I'll say, okay, so the night is dark. Now you're going to take out the word dark, you're going to replace it with something else that is dark, and you're going to describe that thing, right? Which is so it's such a lame way of putting it, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's a trick, and it's a trick to get you into thinking poetically, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the night is dark. What else is dark? The sea can be dark. All right. So the night is the Black Sea. It is all around me. It's inescapable, and if I am not careful, I might drown in it. Right.
Mm. Or like the
Um,
night is an Oreo,
sure.
um, full of, that's as much as I got for now.
No, 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 no. Don't see, and this is what I do. I say, don't let go of it. You
Yeah.
came up with the idea, follow the impulse, go. Describe the Oreo. The night is an Oreo. Describe that fucking Oreo.
Yeah. The night is an Oreo, full of lush cream,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
a rough exterior.
Uh-huh.
And then that's that's good enough for now.
You're gonna stop there. All right. So yes, so one of the things that like I'll coach people with this is it's easy to feel silly, right? And to second guess that first choice that you made. But there's the night as an Oreo is great, right? It's not one that I have ever heard before.
Hmm.
So the trick there is continue to describe the Oreo, how it looks, how it sounds, how it tastes, smells.
Like it crumbles in the distance. See,
Great.
now I'm thinking of things.
And now and then put yourself in relation to that Oreo, right? So um, I've never tasted anything so sweet, right?
Mm.
And you can keep going with this kind of uh, forever, right? Potentially.
Yeah, crisp,
Um,
crisp like the air, crisp. Cookie crisp. The cookie's crisp.
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
absolutely. So what I love is working with people to do this, and like people typically like a lot of the people who take my improvising Shakespeare workshop take it because they're really scared of improvising within that style,
Hmm.
right? Which is understandable. It can be intimidating. It's a big mountain to try to climb, especially if you feel like you're supposed to get it right. But when I teach people this trick and I watch them roll with some idea that uh, I've never heard anybody else do, or I've never heard them do it the way that they are doing it, and I watch them, and I coach them along a little bit. um, it is super exciting because they will go from a place of I don't think I can do this to a place of like, oh, I just made a whole speech
Mm.
about the night, you know, uh, or whatever the prompt is. And it's really exciting to watch because once they kind of have that experience, they've got a little confidence under them, and they're more open to trying some of the other stuff that go with the genre.
Mm.
Um, and you get hilarious things like the night is an Oreo, uh, that if you did those within a Shakespeare scene, like yeah, obviously an Oreo is anachronistic to the time of Shakespeare,
Hmm.
but like whatever you if you did it and you did it without kind of winking at the audience and being like, aren't I funny? If you just did it, it could turn into something incredibly beautiful and surprising.
Mm-hmm.
um, I love it when people surprise themselves.
That's what happened with that Oreo, and I was like, now I got ideas.
Yeah, right. The whole time you haven't even heard a word I've said. You've just been sitting and cooking on the Oreo, right?
Literally cooking, cooking the
Yeah,
cook. Okay. Yeah.
baking. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I I I never get tired of watching people surprise themselves. Uh, that's it's a great. I mean, even if you're just in the audience and you watch it happen, it is so genuinely delightful in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. I remember it was I think it was the third time I auditioned for a really awesome improv show this year. I got in, yay, finally. Um, but I got in and like I had been called back every year. I finally got in, but during the callbacks this year, I literally went, you know what? My goal for 2020 as far as improv is to just not care. Uh and it sounds weird because it's like I want to care, like I'm caring by not caring. And
Yeah.
so the suggestion at one point, I remember it was lawyer. This is the only thing I really remember from the callback was lawyer. And we were doing Foursquare. And I literally went in my mind, I was like, I'm not great with like Foursquare or like scenic games. Like those aren't my forte. And I was like, you know what? But what is my forte is standing around doing nothing and letting other people talk, which is interesting because I like to talk a lot, clearly. Um, but I remember the scene, the suggestion was lawyer. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to lay down on the ground. So I just went and I just laid down on the ground, sprawled my arms out, and Grace Blakeman, actually, Grace was my scene partner, and she came over and she literally went, "Sir, I know it's been a busy day, but you have to get out there and do the rest of those cases. And that moment I went, "Oh, let me play low status. I'm already on the ground." Or he's a high status character, but I'm gonna play it more low status. And I literally went, "Oh, but I don't want to. I just need 5 more minutes." And she goes,
Yeah.
"Sir, you are a very top-notch lawyer," or whatever it was. And that scene, I felt so supported, but also like I just made a physical choice to just lay on the ground.
Yeah.
And so I learned sometimes it's okay to not talk right away in a scene, to just like let it happen.
Ugh. Yeah, that's frequently the case.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think the older I've gotten, the less I start scenes with talking.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, um, a lot of good stuff happens when people aren't talking.
I've also noticed that there are a lot of people who don't like the silence. And I remember I was taking a class and the teacher goes, "All right, we're gonna do nonverbal scenes, like or like nonverbal like games, nonverbal group games." So we're doing nonverbal group games, and like literally, she was like, as soon as something's happening, then you can start talking if you want. So second, I remember this one scene. Someone comes out and they just do this, and as soon as that happens, someone else goes, "Yeah, I love this yoga class." And she goes, "Okay, well, hold on. Let's live in the nonverbal for a moment." And
Yeah,
I've noticed that sometimes I'll go and I'm like, I'm gonna do a nonverbal thing. And like I'll be, like kind of like looking around, like maybe looking, "Ooh, what's this? Let me pull this off the shelf and look at it." And someone goes, "Oh, yeah," they start talking. I'm like, let me just like live in the moment of being in a library or wherever I am. I'll figure it out. But
yeah,
it's interesting how people really just want to like start talking because of the silence. And I'm like, sometimes I just
yeah.
don't want to talk. Like, let me just
I think
explore the space.
we were talking earlier about like things that you get more naturally from doing short form. I think that realization is one that you more naturally get from doing long form.
Mm,
Uh, of
mhm.
like, we don't need to, because short form, you don't have a lot of time. You got to get right to the point.
That's true.
You do. You have to get right to the point. But getting right to the point isn't always a verbal thing, and uh, I think that is something that I've done a lot of working with high school improv students.
Mhm.
A lot of it through comedy sports. Comedy sports has a huge high school league, and high school improvisers really have difficulty with the idea of not talking, just generally. And I think, yeah, short form trains a lot of people to have this like almost desperation of like, we got to get to it. And long form, good long form training will teach you to learn to exist on stage and allow that to be enough. And then when you can bring that to your short form and you can bring the immediacy to your long form, like things start getting much richer and more interesting.
Mm, I love that.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me into my next question, actually. Um, what would you say? And I originally said a good improviser, but someone told me to not use the word good because there's no good and bad improvisers. But what makes a successful improviser? And whatever that means to you, but it's like some people are like, well, unless you're touring and you're not. I'm like, no, I think it's more of like the actual what you pick up as an improviser. So in whatever that means to you, what to you makes a successful improviser?
Um, I mean, it's so cliche, but it really is listening.
Mm,
Um, Listening is like half the battle, I think, and like really listening, and being affected, right?
mhm.
Allowing, and I use listening as a term, improv listening, so it encompasses watching and feeling and all of
Right.
that, but that's all sort of part of that falls under the uh, penumbra of listening. I think
It's heightened and active is what it is.
yeah, it is there. Comedy sports used to have a T-shirt that I really liked that had this like it was a picture of a ninja and it said improv ninja, always watching, always listening.
Mm,
And then it was comedy sports on the back. I really like that because it is, I think, what we should be aspiring to, of just like nothing gets lost. nothing gets dropped. There might be a breadcrumb here that in the moment we don't need to deal with, but later on, because we were listening, because we were watching, we can find a way for it to pay off narratively or comedically or whatever. So I think listening and being affected is really like the biggest stuff. There are other things that the other thing I would say, like, and it's I don't know, it's a very subjective thing, right?
Hmm.
So you're asking me, so I'm giving my answer. The ability to to be affected by what you're hearing and feeling and whatever, but also to be able to get emotional with it. And there, that looks different coming from different improvisers, and it doesn't always mean, like melodramatic acting, schmacking. It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be that, but like being able to, I guess that's what I'm saying is being able to be truthful um, in the moment, even if it's, even if it's heightened, even if it's ridiculous, and if you're doing comedy sports, a lot of the time it's ridiculous. But I think to me, this is true about narrative improv. It's true about heralds and other forms like that. It's true about short form. Is you want someone who isn't playing at the moment.
Mm.
You want them playing in the moment.
Mm.
Um, and if that doesn't make sense, or if it sounds super, uh, I don't know, trite, whatever. I think it's true. Listening, being affected, and being truthful
Mm.
to whatever that moment, the given circumstances, the character that you've created, whatever that is. Um, I've had a few students over the years who have a habit of, while they're improvising, looking at me. If I'm, in the
Mm.
audience coaching, taking notes, whatever, they will look at me, and they usually don't even realize they're doing it, but they're just constantly pinging me with their eyes, and it's a part of them that is checking in for validation from their teacher or their coach or whatever, right? Which is supernatural. Not, it's
Mm-hmm.
not supernatural, it's very natural. um, to want that validation from the person that is training you, right?
Hmm.
To know, like, oh, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But it it's a habit that I really try to help them correct, because as they do it, they lose the truthfulness of the moment that they're in, right?
Hmm.
Because there is a part of them that is trying to go, is this it? Am I doing it right? They can't fully be invested.
Mm.
Um, it's interesting. Like, I think even the most, like, I'm not an actor improvisers, uh, and there are plenty of them.
Hmm.
Um, if they're good improvisers, they are good actors. Even if they don't think of themselves that way, even if they whatever, like, they're in the moment, they're listening, they're reacting, they're being affected. Like, that's acting.
Hmm.
The only difference between that and regular acting is, uh, you're making up the script on your own, or you're given a script from somewhere else. That's
Mm.
the only difference.
Hmm. I
Uh,
love that. I think there's one major recurring thing I think theme. Well, I guess either way that I've discovered from doing a lot of these is the idea of specifically listening has come up a lot.
yeah,
And a lot of people have argued, yes and is like the foundation of improv, but it's almost like listen first and then yes and. So it's
yeah.
almost like listening is the ultimate thing to do before you yes and.
I
But
really think
also,
it is.
oh no,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I really think it is. I think, yes, and it's I about 12 or 13 years ago, I got to study with Alan Arkin.
Mm. Wow.
Because he still teaches. Well, I don't know if he does now, but he was at the time still teaching improv. He was doing these workshops. He lives in New Mexico, so he was doing them in New Mexico, um, and I drove out there with a friend to spend the weekend training with him, and and it was great. He's a lovely man, but it was really interesting getting to study from a guy who was like original Second City, right?
Hmm.
And who had been doing improv since before yes and was really a common phrase.
Hmm.
Um, now it's taken for granted day one of your first improv class, you're going to be taught yes and. Uh, he had people in that workshop. He had a couple of us who were like professional improvisers. He had people who were, like really, really talented, long time, improvisers. And then he had some people who had never done it before and were like, this sounds fun. And the whole weekend, 16 or so hours of training, never said the phrase yes and. Not ever.
Mm.
Um, and he corrected people to stay in the reality that was being created, but it was just really interesting to me to watch that and to it makes me think um, there's a lot of stuff that we assume needs to be part of improv teaching that doesn't
Mm.
that maybe there's another way of approaching it. I don't know,
Mm.
but what he did focus a lot on was, uh, oh, did you hear what she said? Say it again, right? Now feel what she just said.
Mm.
Okay, like that was that was my terrible Alan
I
Arkin.
I thought it was spot on.
Thank you. But he really focused on that, listening and feeling and tone. He was big on that, and it was very interesting. The other thing that I will mention, he had two ways of ending scenes that he liked. He'd say, "And we fade out on that." Which was fun. But what you really wanted was for him to end a scene by going, boom. That was it. Boom. Uh, because every time you got that, you were like, yeah, boom.
Boom.
Alan Arkin says boom.
A lot, apparently.
Yeah, he does.
All right. This has been so exciting. I have one more question for you, which is the big question that is the reason I'm doing this summit in general. Is I have a lot of people, like especially pre-COVID, but even now, people are coming up to me. They're like, Spencer, you've done improv like everywhere. Where should I take improv? And it's hard for me to answer that question because there's a lot that goes into it. So that being said, if someone came up to you and said, "Hey, Rick, where should I take improv? You do a lot of improv. What's
Yeah.
like one piece of advice or one tidbit or something that you'd give to somebody who's asking that question?"
Um, yeah, it is a bigger question than they usually realize that they're asking.
Hmm.
And I can imagine just accidentally just boring the hell out of people with your answers. Um, Normally it's going to depend a lot on where people are, but in this, you know, weird reality that we're in, I guess that's not as much the case, and that I think will probably stay. I think Zoom improv classes are probably here to stay.
Mm.
Um, I think it depends a lot on what they want out of improv. So I'll kind of mention a few things, I guess. I think a local comedy sports is a great place to start because I do think that starting with short form is a great way to go. It's more immediately accessible, and you get to focus on skill sets in a
Mm-hmm.
way that you don't typically doing long form. Um, so you know, depending on the different games that you're playing or the different style of short form show, you're going to learn a lot of different skill sets that are going to end up coming in really handy if you then are doing long form. uh, and because comedy sports is kind of all over the place, it's a great option for a lot of people who, you know,
Hmm.
have a local comedy sports. um, I think in terms of um, like, I think if you're doing it because you want to get training for like commercials, uh, short form is a great place to get that training, but there are also specialized commercial, like improv for commercial classes.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of value to that. I think if you're looking at doing long form, I think you know, going with one of the places that does the sort of traditional, um, you know, uh, like I can't speak directly to like Second City's classes because I haven't taken them, but I don't know. I mean, like, I've played with amazing people who have studied everywhere. Um, so I think it matters where you study improv. I think what matters more is that you study it and that you don't take, I don't know, whatever the, you know, the 6 month or year long program of one place is, and then just decide that you, like, now you know improv and you're done. I mean, I don't know. Plenty of people do that. That's fine. That's great. I believe in kind of continuing to study, you know,
Hmm.
and I know that I have grown a lot as an improviser and as an artist because I've continued to study and continued to find people and classes that would push me, and you know, one of the reasons for that is like 95% of improvisers aren't going to put themselves into, you know, kinds of improv that make them super uncomfortable on their own, right?
Hmm.
But being in the stuff that's super uncomfortable is where the biggest growth is, you know? I mean, like, I think that's just true for people. So it's going to be true for improvisers as well. So, like, continuing to train and continuing to do things that push you. Um, yeah, I've played with people who trained at Groundlings and Second City and IO and UCB and comedy sports and theater sports and impro and, you know, every place under the sun.
Hmm.
Um, and the people that really blow me away and the people who I'm like, God, I cannot wait to play with that person again are people who don't just kind of sit on their laurels and stay comfortable, you know?
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
I love that. I think it is a matter of kind of pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone because again, as you talked about earlier with failure, I mean, just feel free to fail. If it doesn't work, guess what? That's all that happened is it just wasn't a good scene or whatever. Like no one's gonna remember it in 20 minutes.
And to your like, to your point earlier, I I remember my really bad shows. Um, I have done so many shows that I felt were good that I have no memory
Hmm.
of. And I remember my really bad ones. Now, part of that is just like some, you know, dysfunctional stuff, but part of it is the really bad ones. I know exactly what I learned from them. You know, sometimes it was just don't ever do a show there again. But like, you know, they're usually like things that you can take from those experiences. And you know, the the really wonderful boy, I sure did a great job shows, or feeling that way about them. Um, Not only do I not usually like take something aside from just a good feeling, I usually have forgotten about them in a week.
Mm, Positives come and go, negatives accumulate. That's the phrase that my psychology and music professor in college said, and it stuck with me for a long time.
Yeah, it's
Well,
it's rough but true. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's true. Well, Rick, I lied. I said that was the last question, but I have one more question for you. And that question is, would you like to do an improv scene?
Sure.
All right. It's date night.
Date night. Okay.
Date night. All right. Thank you, date night. Sandra, I know that this is your favorite restaurant. So I just wanted to let you know that we are here at Sushi's R Us because I know that sushi is your favorite food. And so I know that nothing is going to go wrong tonight here at this date night.
Jerry, it's really sweet of you to take me here. And I feel like you're building to something, and I'm very excited. We're at Sushi R Us, and you've made a point about it being my favorite restaurant. So I feel like you're going somewhere.
Why don't I propose something here? Why don't I just surprise you with what I'm going to order on the menu?
Okay.
I
Uh,
mean, do you like that proposal? Yeah, is it a yes or a no?
just for you to order, yeah, you can order. Um,
Okay, great. All right, I will.
was that? I
Well,
mean, you didn't bring me here to just order for me.
I guess not. I think you're right. I think we are building to something, but I mean, can we just enjoy the moment and then build up to it? I have the whole thing planned out.
Okay. I want to trust that that's true, Jerry.
Oh, Sandra, don't you trust me? We've been together
I
for
do.
6 years.
No, honey bear, I do. I do.
You do. Okay, you do.
I do.
Oh,
I trust you.
but
No, there's,
that it's just a period at the end of that.
I do.
You do. Well, in that case, I have another question I need to ask you.
Okay.
Um, so get ready. It's a pretty big question here.
Okay.
Um, Sandra, will
Yes.
you uh, pay for dinner tonight?
Son of a
I'm a
bitch, Jerry. Son of a bitch, Jerry.
so I forgot my wallet. Sandra, I'm sorry.
You're jerking me around, Jerry. And I don't, mm, mm.
Um, well, I mean, I just I was just hoping that we'd have an enjoyable night. I brought you to your favorite place. Uh, I really love you, Sandra.
I love you too.
So I mean, you didn't answer that question though.
Will I pay for? Yes, I'll pay for dinner, Jerry. You can Venmo me.
Okay, all right, thanks. Well, that's not all. I mean, may as well ask the other big question, um, Sandra, because I mean, I don't have the money to pay tonight. I mean, I said I forgot my wallet, but really it's because I don't have the money because I spent a lot of money getting you something real special. And I wanna present that to you now, um, here at Sushi RS, your favorite restaurant. So I'm just gonna grab it real quick out of my pocket. um, this is kind of a little nerve wracking, but Sandra,
Jerry.
I love you more than anything in the entire world. We've been together for 5 years. I don't want to be with anyone else but you. And I just have one question to ask you. Uh, will you take a picture with my phone.
I'm leaving you.
I mean, we
See.
can take the. Great. That was super fun. I was like, do I want to say "Will you marry me" or do I want to not? I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like I played it to that, like, the will you, and either way, I think that was a good way to edit it, because if it was "Will you marry me" finally, and then other thing, it's like, oh, he's not getting it.
Yeah.
So I think that was great. Everybody, thanks so much for joining me here at the Improv Summit. I'm Spencer. That's Rick. See you next time. Bye.